So thank you all for being here. I hope you're all having a good conference. I think it's been amazing. The weather is lovely. Be sure to get outside, walk around a little bit, and enjoy your time. So I am Jeff Koslow. I'm the Deputy CISO at ExtraHop Networks. We're a network detection and response vendor. This is a party in the next room, I guess. We should be over there. This is semi-advanced threats versus semi-critical infrastructure, and I thought about that kind of title, and I kind of deliberately made it that way. It's somewhat advanced threats against somewhat critical infrastructure. It's something that I think is going to be out there for a good long time, and so I just kind of wanted to elucidate and give some of my thoughts on what's going to happen here. It's RSA's, it's my presentation, not RSA's. So there's something going on here. I don't know if you know this, but there's a conflict in kind of Eastern Europe right now. What's going on over there is there are some attackers who have somewhat implicit permission to attack the enemies of their geopolitical allies. And this has been going on for a while, but they're attacking other areas, and the powers that be are sort of letting it happen. I predict that some of these groups are going to get good practice in. They're going to get good at attacking some of this, get good at attacking. They're going to develop some of their skills, and they're going to set their sights on some new targets. And they're going to eventually do what most amateur attackers do, is they figure out how to monetize the things that they're doing. And right now they've got some amount of free reign. I won't say full free reign, and it's kind of hard to predict where all this is going. But I liken these kind of to pirates. And it turns out there is plenty of evidence in the past for exactly these sorts of activities. Privateer is the official name for it, but we all think of them as pirates. And good old Queen Elizabeth, long time ago, she would have said, well, if you sail into my ports and you've got a cargo full of stolen Spanish doubloons, yeah, it's okay. We'll figure out how to make it work. You sail into my ports with some of my English breakfast tea, and we got a problem, buddy, right? And that's what was going on. So there's total historical precedence for this. It's not like this has never happened before. I would probably venture to guess that some of these privateers who were out there doing the things that certain geopolitical alliances wanted them to do, they were probably problems later on. So I have a feeling that this is just history repeating itself, and we're doing the same thing. We'll kind of come back to this analogy a little bit later on, and we'll take a look at it. But I do want to discuss what's going to happen. Where are these guys going to go? And I've got a few thoughts here. Congratulations to my marketing department for coming up with a pretty cool modern pirate. I kind of dug that one. They tried to use ChatGPT to Photoshop my face together with Jack Sparrow face. And it turned out terrible. I immediately tried to make the internet forget that image, but don't search for it, you won't find it. But my theory is that these guys are going to try to monetize these newfound skills that they've been cultivating and working on. I don't think this is a controversial theory. I think this is probably something that we all accept is part of the future. So I want to talk about semi-critical. I mentioned earlier semi-critical. Let's talk a little bit about what that means. In order to define semi-critical, we should define critical infrastructure, which has a pretty good working definition, vital to a nation state, that incapacity or destruction of such systems would have a debilitating impact on whatever it is. That's a pretty broad definition. Most of us kind of know where that's at, and we kind of think about that. My theorem, though, is that there's a lot of semi-critical infrastructure that isn't going to get some of the dollars that critical infrastructure is going to get. Again, I don't think this is controversial at all. I'm going to name a few. I happen to think that probably there's going to be some logistics providers. Trucks happen to go across the country. That's why there's trucks on the slide. They're going to go across the country. They're going to tote everything around. Imagine what would happen. I have a feeling that most of these guys are using roughly the same software to coordinate all their logistics. If that went down, you would be inconvenienced. It might not be critical infrastructure, but it sure as heck is inconvenient when you can't get your Amazon delivery of your new toaster. Food suppliers, public transportation is one that I think is a really interesting one. Some of these state and local governments, smaller banks and credit unions that may not be able to get some of the funding, and public schools, there's a lot of these. And we could go through a whole bunch more. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but these things are all semi-critical infrastructure. And I kind of want to think about it in terms of, if you're inconvenienced by it, that would be the semi-critical infrastructure. Why do I think these particular these actors are going to go after some of this semi-critical stuff? I think it's kind of in their nature. I think right now, you might classify these folk as hacktivism, right? Right now, their goal is to go out and try to disrupt whatever geopolitical alliance is their enemies, and that's what they're doing. At the same time, they're gaining a lot of familiarity with these particular targets, right? They're looking at these things, they're looking at PHP infrastructure, and they're trying to figure out how this works and what sort of attacks work against it, and trying to disrupt it. And I think that's what they're going to continue to do. They will find financial motivations for this. I'm not totally convinced that right now it's all financial motivation. I'm a little unclear on how that happens. And then finally, I think they're just going for big impact. I think they just want to see the world burn sometimes, right? That's our pirate metaphor. So this is a bleak prediction for the future, but I will have some things that we can talk about to how to fix some of these. This is sort of a parade of horribles slide. I don't really think I actually want to go through it. If some of these attacks are successful, there are definitely economic impacts to things, including there's some delay hiring, unemployment, rising inflation. I think this is mostly self-explanatory. So what I want to do is I want to go through some of the existing things that have happened in the past that are exactly this. And again, this is sort of a parade of horribles, and I kind of hope to go through it, but I want to think about what some of these things are. And you'll see numbers on here that are big, but not terrible. And this isn't the world I want to live in, so I just want to kind of think about some of these and enumerate them a little bit. This was the JBS against the meat packer plant a few years ago. Sure enough, the meat prices went up after that. Again, inconvenient, but and not critical, but certainly not helping the situation very much. Colonial Pipeline. This one probably actually qualifies as critical infrastructure, and I don't really want to draw harsh lines anywhere here. I just want to point this one out that this caused a lot of problems. I actually happen to live on the West Coast, and so I kind of watched it bemusedly as everyone was like, I can't get gas anywhere, I can't get gas anywhere. I'm also old enough to remember some of the 1970s gas crises and things like that, and thinking about that and just kind of going, wow, that's really unique. Hopefully unique. We're all here in lovely San Francisco, which I like. This is one of my favorite cities on the planet. I like coming down here. This one surprised me. I actually thought this was a little bit more recent, but it turns out it was 2016. The Muni went down for a couple of days. Happened to be a holiday weekend, so it probably wasn't the worst thing that could happen in the world. But the Muni said that they lost just over $1 million in lost revenue. But how much of that is people who get frustrated and say, oh, I don't want to take the Muni anymore, it's frustrating, or something happened and they just won't want to do that? Also, I think this one is unique because, and I don't happen to remember exactly what happened in this one, but I think about a lot of the attack surface on this one expanding. I think we're continuing to build in electronics to all these systems and things like that, and I suspect that some of this is not, it's all being it's all being supplied by some of the same manufacturers. Like, I happen to bring my Clipper card with me down here because I sometimes travel via the Muni. I left my Orca cards back in Seattle, and I brought my Clipper card down here. I have a feeling those are probably actually the same underlying system all the time. And can that be attacked? I suspect that it can. I don't have anything. This is going into ransomware a little bit. Again, it seems inconvenient. These guys had a large loss and then insurance, and that's definitely a problem, and I'm sure the community had to pay for it, so all our taxes are going to go up over this one. This one I actually really like quite a bit. Email was down for this critical departments for a couple of weeks. They worked around it. They created temporary Gmail accounts, and I'm sure those things are now well secured and no longer being used. And as a CISO, I think about these things like, how did we work around it? What are we going to do to get rid of those workarounds? But to me, this one was kind of important because I happen to do some construction projects here and there on my own time and think about building things. And I'll bet you that all the people who build houses and get housing permits and building permits, that they were probably delayed by weeks or months or a very long time. And that, again, has a real economic impact on what's happening. All right, we're nearing the end of this kind of parade of horribles here. So this one bothers me. This was recent-ish. It bothers me because this isn't just an attack. This is something that's going to last for a long time. Those 2,000 people, essentially they've been doxxed, right? And that's never a good thing. So we've got a problem here that lasts much longer. So you think about the short-term ramifications of something like not being able to get a building permit. Yeah, sure. But you also have people who have lost a whole bunch of information. This one I found interesting. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about they lost some essential services. And this probably affected a very small number of people, but I'm guessing that very small number of people was it was hard for that community to work through this. And so I like this. I didn't like this one, but I like this one as an example of something that just is going to be hard for people to kind of overcome. All right, that's enough on that. So why? Why is this semi-critical infrastructure that I didn't necessarily do a good job of defining, but why is it so vulnerable? As a technologist and as somebody who thinks about these sorts of things, especially in the light of kind of networking, I'm going to blame some legacy technology and legacy protocols, and then I'll bin that all underneath immature cybersecurity, and we'll talk about some of these, and then I'll give you some action items on the way out here. This one, I hesitated on this one because I thought it's kind of old. I'm going all the way back to 2017. However, the real problem here was this Eternal Blue. I don't want to repeat the story of Eternal Blue. It feels like it's been done forever. The problem is this SMBv1 protocol. It was designed I think it was 1983. That's on the next slide. $1 billion in cyber attacks from that time. And you would think that we as a cybersecurity community would have tried to eliminate a lot of that. Well, again, I feel like these are a little bit old, but my company did some investigation on this, and we found that 67% of environments are still using that old SMBv1 protocol. There is an SMBv3. It has some really nifty things on it that have to do with signing of content and some really interesting new security measures that are much more recent than 1983. I mean, 1983 is essentially, we were hammering on rocks trying to figure out how to make the SMB protocol work, by today's standards, of course, cavemen. It was also deprecated over 10 years ago. As a quick sidebar, and thinking about legacy protocols, which is something that I think about quite a bit, CISA, the US CISA department, just yesterday issued a warning on a protocol called SLP, which is a very old legacy, speaking of legacy protocols, a very old protocol. It happens to be UDP. I think it's port 1801. I'd need to double check on that. It has it has an amplification factor, much like DNS attacks. So it's totally susceptible to DDoS. You can go to Shodan, you can look and see how many hosts are still out there doing this, and the number is horrifyingly large. So we'll talk about that in a little while. LLMNR is a low-level name resolution protocol. It's used quite a while ago. It probably should be gotten rid of. It's had its share of problems. And then I just got to beat up on this one. NTLM, again, designed in 1993, which is, we were no longer hammering on rocks to make protocols. We were actually like hewing them out of wood with an adze or something like that. I don't have a good metaphor here. But that's also been deprecated for quite some time. It's really bad. This one is probably the worst of all these up here. It really causes a number of problems. And if you have a red team, the red team just loves it when they see this. And so we can do better here. That's in 34% of environments still. I'm guessing that these numbers haven't gone down in the last couple of years. I haven't redone the study recently. Okay, so that's enough on protocols. The next one is legacy frameworks. And if you look really carefully here at this horrible collapsing building, I put a WordPress logo on there. Perennial beating on WordPress. And I want to think about this one just for a minute, not necessarily in terms of WordPress, but in terms of like the underlying framework. Again, I spent a lot of time in a dev shop working my way through building software, building secure software. Some of these old legacy frameworks are just hard to manage. They've got a lot of problems. They don't necessarily, they bolt on security afterwards. It's very hard to bolt on good security like MFA or SSO or some of the modern techniques that we have. You often don't have visibility into these. And then finally, I didn't write this one very well here, but if it's a PHP vulnerability, there's just a bunch of things that attackers just have in their catalog that they can come in and they can look through these attacks and build up new attacks. This is just well-known attack surface area, and there's a lot of it. And this is what I fear is that some of these, what did I say earlier, the logistics and the trucking companies or something like that, have built some of this technology on top of some of these legacy frameworks. And believe me, I know how fast some of these frameworks work, or how fast they move. I wrote code a number of years ago in like a Ruby on Rails framework, and I thought it was really cool, and it had a bunch of really cool security properties. And now when I look at it, I'm like, ooh, there's still some things that need to be built on there. And Ruby on Rails isn't all that old. So these frameworks need to be replaced. Costly, painful, and time-consuming to remediate these flaws and find ways to remediate them. However, it's also costly, painful, and time-consuming to handle the incidents that come out of these. Okay, all right, again, we're moving on here. I gave you a parade of horribles, and I'm gonna try to give some lighten the mood a little bit and give some suggestions that I would say for improving this. Go through some of these. Disable your unused ports. Again, that thing that happened with CISA just the other day, the SLP, I hope somebody can tell me if I'm right on the UDP 1801, but it's a good idea to make sure that's not going out your network, because there's all sorts of people who are doing that right now. The thing is, it's relatively easy to see too. Looking at your network and inspecting some of your logs, you can see this pretty easily. I kind of beat the legacy protocols a little bit. I would suggest, I mentioned earlier, SMBv3 has a bunch of really nifty features in it. Those are good things to enable. Most of the modern appliances, network appliances and things like that all have supported this for a really long time. I will admit, at my house, I have one old Sonos device. I'm not exposing my surface area here to attackers, but I do have an old Sonos device that will only let me do SMBv1, and I'm going to retire it sometime this year. Web application firewalls can help. I already made my plea for use the latest and greatest frameworks in a development shop. A little bit hard, but again, this is what we need to do. Password hygiene, the other thing I've done in my shop is anybody who's bringing in a new application, SSO is just an absolute hard requirement. I really need the SAML or OAuth. I can work with either one of them, but for my onboarding and offboarding, I just need that, and I need to make sure that my employees don't have special usernames and passwords for other things. Yes, password managers are nice and convenient, but from an onboarding and offboarding perspective, I want to know where all that stuff is at, and I want to be able to flip a switch to shut it off or flip a switch to turn it on. I happen to like some of the Zero Trust architecture models. I don't necessarily think that, well, Zero Trust is much more of a destination, much more of a journey than a destination, as probably you've heard other people say that here. Segmenting your network out is a good one. I'm going to jump over to the next one there, network detection and response. That's an interesting way to look at everything. If you're not familiar with it, it's like endpoint detection and response, except it's using the network, and you can see what's happening on your network. All those flaws that I showed you a little while ago, those are real easy to detect and kind of go through from a hygiene perspective. The middle one there is actually IP allow lists. I've had some pretty good luck with IP allow lists for the stuff that for some of the applications that I use. All right, so again, I gave you some dark and dreary slides of buildings collapsing and pirates and things like that. I wanted to leave on a happy note here. So this one's got a sunrise, not a sunset. And somebody built a little tower there so that they've got visibility into what's happening out on the seas. Visibility is key to defending your fleet. Bring it back around here. The Queen is like sitting happily at the top of that, sipping her tea and watching out for pirates. Probably not. But this is what we can do. We constantly talk about visibility in the industry, and I think that we can handle some of these problems. So this is the standard slide. Apply what you've learned today. Go home. I would actually start taking inventory. I was reworking this slide as I thought about it. I was thinking, go rework your inventory. Go take a look at what you have. Your not necessarily firewall rules, but what sort of networks what protocols you're using. I mentioned the SMBv1. There's some TLS. You can do some really nifty TLS analysis and take a look through some of that stuff. In a month, have a plan for getting rid of some of that. NTLM v1 can be removed relatively easily. Again, you might find that your Sonos device doesn't handle it and that you need to do some work, but you can build a plan to remove some of these things. And within 6 months, have a plan for eliminating some of these insecure protocols, have a plan for replacing some of the frameworks that some of your applications are written in, have a plan for full SSO and MFA on everything. I've attended a couple talks this time on passkeys, and I'm really excited about what I might be able to do with passkeys in the next 6 months. The thing is, you're never going to get to passkeys unless you've already built a bunch of SSO controls. So that's what I have for today. I'd be happy to take any questions about semi-critical infrastructure or semi-advanced attackers, if there's any questions. If not, I will thank you for your time.